Hey, want to take a walk on the wild side and experience the bleeding edge of technology? Then get ready, because it doesn't get much more edgy than this. You're in for a wild ride. You're listening to Sovryn Tech with your host, the man in triple black, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He's got a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
That's right. Welcome to Sovryn Tech. Of course, Brian Sovryn here with you. And today I have a fantastic guest. I am really, really excited about this because, like I've said so many times on this show, there's so many technologies being developed right now that are really, I think, going to set everything free, whether people realize it or not even. And one of these things that I had heard about through some of the listeners of this show and really just all around was a project called MaidSafe, and it's at MaidSafe.net. And I have with me today, I have David Irvine, who is, David, would you say you're the founder of MaidSafe?
Yeah, founder and probably team member.
Team member.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask you about what team member means, but first, tell me what is MaidSafe? Yeah,
MaidSafe. The idea behind MaidSafe was really it's decentralize the internet, and what that means in decentralized internet is almost like what Bitcoin did for money, or is doing for money. Decentralizing something like that to me means take out all the rubbish in the middle, the parts that you don't need, so parts of the financial system that were complex. Bitcoin was able to remove that. So MaidSafe looked at the internet and said, this is quite strange, because if I'm going to speak to you, I'm going through just now like Skype or something, Microsoft servers. Why should I ask Microsoft if I can speak to you, and why are they allowed to cut this call off or give content to some other agency? If I want to speak to someone, I should speak directly to them across the internet. And we realised that everybody's computer's connected, and everybody's computer has got a lot of resources. If those resources can all be collected together and form some sort of cyber brain, a machine, if you like, then we could all use that cyber brain to communicate with each other. And the mechanism for that is that us as the human have put a piece of software on our computer. That computer joins the network. It proves it's got a resource that's valuable to the network. We can then take a certificate almost from that resource and join the network as a human. The network itself then stores our data, makes sure our data is safe, allows us to share it with our friends in complete privacy, and allows us to communicate. And that type of network is incredibly more powerful than any centralized server-based network. And it also does what Bitcoin does. It removes the bit in the middle we don't need. It removes the servers, the inefficiencies that we don't need. And that is really important.
Okay, so how does this differ, say, from a mesh network, or does it differ from a mesh network?
It uses very similar principles to mesh network. Mesh network's a little bit lower down level. We have to create a networking protocol called reliable UDP. Mesh networking's down at that level, and we're talking to some mesh networking projects because it would be great to get them involved. What MaidSafe does, though, it allows all the computers to connect at every level. So with MaidSafe, you've got the ability to log in, put your data on it, walk away, and your data's protected for life. And nobody knows you. We don't know you're using the system, because we shouldn't know you're using the system, because otherwise how could we secure you?
Right.
Today's system, it's almost like the locksmith that gives you a lock for your door but keeps the master key, and maybe will let you use your own door, maybe won't. That's not security, and that's the centralized internet just now. You've got the likes of Google or Microsoft or these companies who will actually determine whether you can and when you can use the internet. And that's not a logical system. It's
right. Essentially, I mean, even like Google could say, even if you got your password right, if they don't want you to access it, they just say you can't access it. So you're saying MaidSafe just doesn't allow for that, or bypasses all that?
It bypasses all of that. The deal is between you, the human, and the cyber brain, if you like, the summation of all of our computers connected, and that's it. There's no other party involved. So you go onto the MaidSafe network and it's like the internet should have been from day one. If you look at the internet just now, all of these intermediaries which just get in the way, because why would I want to log into someone else's server to speak to one of my friends? It's not clever. I don't know Google.
Great point.
You know, it's an unnatural system. It's not found in nature anywhere that there's this intermediary body between two elements that want to communicate. And it's also extremely inefficient because data has to go from me to Microsoft, say, back to you in this call that we're on. That's extremely inefficient, and it means that we have to trust they're not listening, which they may well be. So that level of trust should not ever be something that any human has to have with any other human, or certainly with a corporation. MaidSafe is built in a mechanism that nobody should trust us, but we trust the machine, we trust the cyber brain, and everybody's got access to all of the code to make sure that thing's correct.
So you're like Bitcoin, and you use that to compare it at one point. And I think that's a good comparison. Yeah. So it's a trustless system,
completely trustless, and that's one of the strange parts of the MaidSafe project, because we're a company. MaidSafe is a company, and we've taken 8 years. We've created this system. There's a huge amount of work goes into.
Wow, 8 years.
8 years, yeah. 2006, 22nd of February 2006. Some of my friends started giving me cash to make this happen, and it's an easy date to remember because I don't borrow money. But
yeah, so okay, I guess this is shocking because, and I guess I want to know, like, what inspired you to do this, because 8 years ago, I mean, we didn't have all this Snowden revelations. You know, I don't even think we really had anything from like Thomas Drake and others. Yep. You know, none of this NSA business or GCHQ or whoever. What inspired you then?
The system was illogical. I was actually away and working away as a consultant in IT and network design and whatnot, and designed probably one of the largest private networks in the world. I then came back to Scotland thinking that people here should be getting that same level of attention, and realised that the servers that I was getting people to put into businesses were cut down versions. They were terrible versions of software. You never knew how long they would be getting installed for. The customer had no idea what they were. And it just seemed like something's wrong here. Why is this so difficult? And why is the imbalance? And at that point, I actually created a system called eBoxit, which was a standalone server, and thought, well, this is better. People can use this, but I couldn't really get capital for it at the time. It was a hardware solution. And at that time, I thought, well, if everyone's got a server, why don't they back each other's data up? You know, why have tapes? Like, I could have some of your data, you could have some of mine. And I thought, well, if that was done in a way where I didn't have to know you, where it was completely decentralized, then the ideas just came out. That was about 1996, 97, when I started really looking at this. And from 2002 to about 2006, I took time out. I spent much more time in a lifeboat and delivering yachts about the place and being out at sea thinking about it. And I really just thought, this is actually crazy. And I suddenly realised that if you taught someone computer engineering or computer science, just gave them a very good engineering background and said, here's a computer, it communicates, it's got some hard drive space and CPU and all the rest of it, and it's going to be connected to every other computer in the world. Now design a mechanism for each of the computers to talk or to speak to each other. You would never, ever put a server in the middle of it. And then it dawned on me that what we had done, we had taken networking from years ago through local area networking with servers to share resources like expensive hard drives. They became metropolitan area networks. Then the internet happened, and we just kept copying that model. And then we came to the point of, well, who's going to own these servers that we're all connecting to now? And then along came the internet companies, so you got your Yahoos, your Googles, and all the rest of it. And we just blindly followed that model and trained our computer scientists at some of the best universities in the world. This is the model that works. Don't do anything else. This works. When someone goes to the network, they log into a server. And it was very apparent that it was a very illogical way to do networking.
Sure.
So really, that was it. Go back to the drawing board, and I told some people about it, and told people about these ideas, and knocked together a demo in Python, and then started getting investment. And when I got investment from the friends and family, I went away to a place called Brno. It's the second city in the Czech Republic, and they speak no English there at all. So I spent 8 months actually focused on designing a completely decentralized internet, and that's really where it started. And interestingly enough, one of the first things that went into this decentralized internet was a cryptocurrency, and that was all written up in 2006. So I was really happy when Bitcoin. When I seen the Bitcoin paper in 2009, I thought, well, it's not really decentralized. It's doing something, but there's data here. There's a big block of data, the blockchain,
Right.
and that's not really decentralized. It's just copied and distributed. So I sort of wrote it off a little bit, I must say. But I thought it would be great, if something like that worked. And now it has worked. At the same time, we're able to release this code, like decentralize all the data and communications. So it's great because Bitcoin almost broke the water for us. And
yeah, it led the way, or at least showed people, hey, this kind of system can work, and we can even take it further.
Yeah, why have humans doing something that maths can accomplish 100% efficiently 100% of the time?
Right. This is interesting because you're one of the few other people I've heard who has admitted that, because I say it on this show a lot, but not a lot of people will admit that Bitcoin is essentially centralized.
Yeah.
It's really not a decentralized system in the purest sense.
No.
So that's intriguing that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think it's a system that's distributed. It's as decentralized as Google is. They distribute their data centers, and Bitcoin has distributed this blockchain. I think, though, the decentralization component of Bitcoin for me is the decentralization of the financial structure.
Right.
And that's the important part. So they've not decentralized any of the data components because there wasn't a data network available to them. And I think that's the key difference there.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely decentralizing, as in it takes the power away from the powerful right now.
Yeah.
And that's great. Yeah. So MaidSafe then, how is that decentralized? Now, I mean, my understanding of it is that you essentially give up a little bit of hard drive space on everybody's computer, and how does that go?
Yeah, really, what happens is it's very similar in many ways to Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, there's this proof of work thing that people use to create value in Bitcoins or whatever.
Right.
In the MaidSafe network, there's a proof of resource. So when your computer gets connected to the MaidSafe network by installing software, it gives up some space, and shreds of data are stored on that. There's no files stored. The network only holds highly encrypted, obfuscated shards of information. So your computer will end up storing some of these shards of information that are unreadable by humans and the network. And as those shards of information are stored, that the network's able to actually identify your computer cryptographically in a cryptographically secure way. It's like we've taken VeriSign and turned it into a mathematical algorithm, which again is a correct mechanism, would remove some of the unneeded thing. With that ability, the network can monitor and this is the network that monitors. There's no humans involved here. The network's actually human resistant. If there's any humans tampering with any component of the network, the network itself removes that component. So it's a human resistant machine, if you like, an autonomous network. And from that autonomous network, because you've put that computer on, you can actually prove that it's your computer by getting a copy of the certificate that's created for it. And then as a human, you can store information because you've got that proof of resource. So the network will say, hi, human, that's quite good. We can see that you're providing a resource. The network will now give you some resource to work with. And this is one of the key differences with Bitcoin. So what we've managed to come up with, and I think this is really quite cool, is rather than burning electricity to prove value, as Bitcoin does with the hashing, what we've done is the network can look at this resource and say that's an instantly valuable resource, because that resource is information, and that information is crucial to mankind, that information is looked after. You're doing your bit. And this proof of resource, and there's actually a cryptocurrency built into the system called SafeCoin. So when, excuse me, when people are mining, if you like, their computer goes on the network, it's almost like they're mining as their computer's storing data, and it's not their data, it's these shards of encrypted, obfuscated things.
Right.
The network pays them with SafeCoin. That SafeCoin is just like Bitcoin, except it's on a distributed blockchain, which itself is completely, it's distributed.
Okay, so let me be clear on the shards of information. You essentially, like, you have a specific amount of hard drive space set aside to be used, however, almost like a cache for the network. And there will just be pretty much random ones and zeros, not complete information at all.
That's right.
That just gets spread around to everything. Is that about right?
That's correct. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. It's as compared to where with the blockchain, for like blockchain technology, you're downloading like the complete everything, the complete resource, everything that's happening. As to where with this, it's this really, like you said, distributed. Just ones and zeros. There's not a complete info box there.
That's right. It's all ones and zeros. And the important thing is the network can't even decrypt it. The only person that can decrypt it is the person who put those shards of information on, and that's you, the human. So when you log in, you create an account, and you use the certificate that your computer has got to be able to create an account, and this is self-authentication mechanism. So you actually store a very small piece of information onto the network that you know where it is and you know how it's encrypted. So you put a couple of passwords in, and that small piece of information is the root directory to all of your information. And that root directory has got a directory for keys, it's got a directory for communications. And that allows you to have your own private information that is a disk of, it's not infinite size, but it's 2 to the 64. It's as big as a computer can actually count to.
Sure, so it's pretty big.
It's pretty big. Yeah.
So there's no passwords getting sent out. This is all being done client side on your computer.
There's no password exists anywhere on the network.
That's incredible.
Password doesn't ever exist on your computer. It's in your brain. That's it.
Right.
So we can say quite clearly that we've got 100% server security because there's no servers, and 100% password security in terms of being in transit or on the network because there is no passwords. So that's where this self-authentication mechanism is pretty beautiful, I think, because it's self-authentication. You have made this deal with a machine, the network, no humans, and that network is run by complete logic. So you go on, you put your information on that drive. Now you can share information on the drive, and interestingly, I could share on the MaidSafe network. I could share with you, Brian, a directory that contains anything. So rather than sharing at the HTTP level, the web or any of this, we're actually sharing at the drive level. So you could share a running CAD program with the plane half designed on it, or you could share a Word program with the Word document in there. Everything is shared at the disk level. Now, because it's at the disk level, you can do anything you can do in the current internet. You could put a website there. You could put whatever you wanted on
that you can access from MaidSafe.
That you can access from MaidSafe. And this is one of the things that's quite interesting. As I was saying, I looked at a lot of the way nature worked and thought what we've got is extremely poor in terms of efficiency, this intermediary body. And one of the interesting things, lots of side effects come out of the MaidSafe thing. If you put a website on MaidSafe and people on the MaidSafe network are reading that website, the system does a caching. So copies of shards of data are brought down all the way to you if you're reading a web page. If someone else is reading the web page near you, they probably pick up some of the shards of information that you're looking at the web page left behind. So it's intelligent caching. But basically the benefit of that is if there's a website that's very popular, it goes faster. Now,
Okay, so this is kind of like pre-caching that mobile browsers do, where
yeah.
but this is decentralized pre-caching, where it's not being
yeah.
done on your machine.
Yeah, it's decentralized across the internet, and that is one of the kind of logical benefits, because today if you get a website and it's very popular, it probably crashes.
Right.
Because of the centralized approach to it. And in the MaidSafe network, if it's very popular, it goes faster. Now, that's where logic wins, because popular information has to be delivered faster to more people, because that's what humanity needs. We need the information when it's popular. And that's a really good benefit. But there's other huge benefits to this, apart from the fact that obviously your data is extremely secure, and
yeah,
your IP address is scrubbed on hot one, so people can't even tell who's using the system. There's no way to know who's using the system. It's fully encrypted communications and without IP addresses. So if you look at it, we've connected everyone's computer together and shared shared parts of that computer that, importantly, they weren't using. So it's empty hard drive, unused CPU, unused bandwidth that's shared. So we're sharing stuff we don't have and providing a much more powerful, more efficient solution to the internet. 1.7% of all electricity generated in the USA today goes into data centers. It's an ecological disaster, as well as an illogical, very illogical and insecure internet.
Yeah, I mean, the whole system's inefficient.
Yeah.
I mean, and we should, one of the things we love about our technological world is the efficiency.
Yeah.
But at its base level, it's incredibly inefficient. And so MaidSafe is really, really harnessing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And really what we're saying is this, it's almost like the people's network. That This is a network that's fueled by the people for the people. So you can do things, and because there's some stunning innovations I think will come along now. We've got a mailing list which is filling up, but because everyone supplies their own resource, the beauty of the logic comes through. Because if you were a company and you were Google, for instance, or you were Dropbox or one of these companies, and you thought, we're going to have a lot of users in China, 5 years before you get those people using your system, you start doing planning permission, you get the data center built and all this sort of stuff. And then the users come and you've got the data center to work with them. In MaidSafe, because the users bring their own resources, the data center is where your users are when your users happen to be there. So there's no forward. So, and we've got people just now that are building, for instance, like Dropbox replacements.
Right.
In a MaidSafe network, how simple is that? You just build the application. All of the storage is provided by the users who are using the Dropbox system. So
there's no need to build infrastructure, which is one of the things that holds back so many companies.
Yeah, there's no infrastructure, and I think that's one of the really interesting elements that could come out of this whole project. And I'll explain more about the project soon, because, as I say, MaidSafe is a company. A network like that cannot be owned by a company, because nobody should trust us, and we shouldn't expect them to. But it's very interesting, because if we can reduce the cost of innovation down to a few hours or days on the keyboard designing an application that people can roll out, then what we can do is globalize innovation properly. So it's not all in Sandhill Road, and round miles around there. The cost
and how much farther can we get? How much faster? Yeah. I mean, with that kind of innovation.
And I'd love to see this happening throughout the world, that people, and we kid on just now, we say someone in their bedroom in Alaska or down in Australia created this multi-million-dollar system. It's very unusual that they would, because they're generally VC backed and whatnot.
Right.
In the MaidSafe system, people actually will be able to do that. But importantly, doctors and people like that will be able to share information very privately, instantaneously, and with no cost. And when you look at medical research, 60% of medical research is spent on, or 60% of time in these kind of research is spent on trying to raise grants and funds to buy things like VPNs and routers and servers and administrators. Right. And we just remove that. That's an efficiency in the system, just remove it. It's not required.
that is frankly mind blowing.
Yeah.
To me. I mean, that I agree, and I have so many questions. I want to get to a couple here.
Yeah.
One of them is, and we were just talking about companies, you know, and how they're set up and how they innovate. You mentioned that you were a team member with MaidSafe, and maybe, you know, could you describe what a team member is, and maybe how your company works?
The way the company works is it depends what I'm doing. I could be considered the boss at one stage or the CEO at one stage with business meetings. And I'm a research engineer, and there's a bunch of research engineers, but my sort of title is team member. I don't really go by anything. So I'm sort of on one of the things we were doing the web page about the company, and it was like put all our positions in it, and I was currently on point. You know, somebody else might be on point tomorrow or the day after,
Right.
Who knows? But so I founded the company and came up with the ideas and did the inventions and whatnot at the beginning. They've all been improved by all the team round about me. So I think maybe founder would be the kind of thing, but
I like that idea. I like a non-hierarchical,
yeah.
Kind of a cooperative, business model as compared to the average thing we're used to. That sounds
It's
good.
kind of funny here because Prakash is in charge of the engineering part of the business, and Prakash he's an unbelievably nice person. He's just super nice. He can look at you and tell if he's offending you, and he stops. And if there's people coming into the company, it's me that does the business meetings and the deals and whatever. And then when I go to the keyboard to do some programming, Prakash is my boss for that period.
Right.
So there's a kind of strange mix, and that's why I sort of like a flock of starlings. You know, somebody's at the front at some stage, but we share it.
Well, I love the sound of that, because I mean, it sounds like, you know, the company MaidSafe works like the, you know, software, the project MaidSafe, which, I mean, that's exciting. So my next question is, I want to backpedal a little bit on, like you were saying, you could store a web page there, as well as it sounds like you can store, or you can run apps within MaidSafe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is MaidSafe, the software itself, is it going to have a web browser built in? How does that work?
What we're doing is we're supplying the platform, so we'll supply the platform where people can log in and share information at the disk level.
Okay.
So anything you can do in the disk level of a computer upwards is possible. So that's everything you can do in the internet today, but everything you can also do in your personal computer locally will be able to be done globally and in a shared manner throughout the world. So the MaidSafe software itself, it's, as you like, I think about it as this is the new internet, completely the new internet, because it's ridiculous to have the one we've got. So this is the new internet. It's the way that the internet should have worked, and people will put applications on it. And some of the applications that people are looking at just now is like Open Science, a publication system. As I say, Dropbox,
Right.
Dropbox stuff's a no-brainer. YouTube type systems. There's multi-currency wallets and whatnot. So all of these application developers will just develop on top of the MaidSafe platform. But that's really why we've created Project Safe. We're going through, and we're at New York. We'll be really handing the whole MaidSafe network over to everyone, to the world. And
in when is this now?
in January, it's not January, April. I should actually sleep sometimes. April the 7th, I think it is. It's a Bitcoin conference in New York.
Oh, okay. I'll be at that one.
Oh, fantastic, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get to meet in the flesh then.
That's brilliant. That's great. So we'll be making some announcements there, because we've said all along this network cannot possibly be owned by anyone, and we're about to make sure that it's absolutely not owned by anyone. And MaidSafe will take a position along with all of the developers who are going to develop applications on top of it, and we'll make our future cash, if you like, off of this system the exact same way as anyone picking the system up today and building an application on it will make their wealth. So I've explained it to people. MaidSafe are now going to eat at the same table as everyone who's using the system.
Right.
This is a whole new. Now, we're in a great position because we know how it works, and obviously, that's fantastic for us. But the ownership of the network will become global.
So are you going to pull off sort of like what Ubuntu does, where Ubuntu's, the OS is totally free, but they offer tech support at a charge? Is that kind of the idea, or explain it to me?
Not really. I think what we'll do is MaidSafe have got some more innovations to do on top of the network. There's several things, an autonomous voting system, a digital voting system. There's various things that we'll put on top of this network once it's out, and we'll continue to support the network. We'll be probably paid for supporting that network through SafeCoin, which is the thing that the miners on the network are actually going to be creating.
Right.
So this is a sort of new cryptocurrency based on this proof of resource thing.
Yeah, this is the other question I wanted to ask about, was more about SafeCoin. So SafeCoin is going to pay the system itself.
Yeah, the system itself will generate SafeCoin, and basically, what can happen here, and there's a couple of things. One's quite good because I think it's quite fun, that you could download MaidSafe and say the Dropbox application or the YouTube application. I just use MaidSafe and say, right, that's great, all my data's safe, all my photos are safe, everything's pretty safe now, I can share information, I can communicate, nobody's spying on me anymore, I'm happy, it was all free, and it was a really nice experience. But then something quite strange can happen, because you could look at your screen again and realise that this thing that you downloaded for nothing just made you money. So that's a really nice experience for customers to have and for people to have, and I'm looking forward to it happening to me. So that's really good, and that's again part of the logic of the system, that
right.
We should all be able to participate in this and have a feeling that it belongs to us all. Now, one of the interesting things that I'm looking at just now, and I'm having debates on the mailing list, is the miners who are we call them miners. We started to call them earners because they're earning, valid. So these miners will earn SafeCoin, but they'll earn at a much higher rate when they mine above the network average. So the network average amount of data has to be, the miners have to, their machine has to go above that. So it's like they're mining above what information currently exists, and when they provide more space than the information that exists, sort of supply-demand thing.
Right, so you're giving them incentives to offer more to the network.
Yeah, absolutely, and as I say, this is great because it's all part of this cyber brain, so MaidSafe really have nothing to do with it. The maths does all that for us. So an interesting thing that I've been looking at recently is, because they mine above the network average, why don't we just give everyone access to MaidSafe and they don't pay at all? They don't even need to provide disk space, but they'll get resources up to the network average disk space free of charge. So all of a sudden you've got people who have got maybe a Dropbox or YouTube type app or whatever, and they may be able to store several gigabytes today, several terabytes tomorrow, petabytes later,
right,
at no charge. Now that becomes quite interesting, because at the very start of the project, people used to ask me, about returns. What's the return going to be for investment in MaidSafe in 2006? And I kind of told them about a dream as well that I have, that we make something like this globally available, that down in the deepest, darkest parts of Africa, in places where there's extreme poverty, that we give them access to the world's information, but not just give them access, but give them the ability to have a computer, like one laptop per child, suffer because the drive is so small. They install MaidSafe here, they find you've got a one laptop per child computer with several terabytes of space available to you. So these people could start then becoming part of our global network, which is really important to me.
even with low computer resources, they could become a part of it.
Yeah, terribly low computer resources, and that's a phenomenal thing. So, going back to the the people who were asking about what return would you get on investment from MaidSafe, the first thing saying was, look, this is a replacement for the internet. We're cryptographically we're quite deep mathematical thinkers. We can count 1 and 1 does equal 2. You know, we're not going to do something to starve us all. There will be returns. But the most important return would be, what about that person who jumps out from behind a bush in Kenya with a cure for cancer on that computer?
Oh, yeah.
How much was the return worth? And this is crucial, and it's crucially important. We get another 5 billion people being able to use systems like this, and there's another 5 billion people going to be looking at the problems that we really want to solve, medical problems, financial, whatever. So the MaidSafe network is likely to be able to give, it's almost like if you said to Dropbox and Google Drive and Windows Azure and Amazon, tell you what, could you just make your services completely free to the rest of the world? They would all drop dead. And it's our design choice to do that. And that could be a startling thing.
Right. At that point, it becomes priceless. What does it matter what you get as far as an actual return?
Yeah.
Because the whole world's going to benefit in ways that are incalculable.
Absolutely.
Boy, that's exciting.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to touch on something there. I mean, one of the things that really annoys me with, you mentioned earlier, about, you know, like business models like Yahoo and Google and all of them. Yeah. I'm really annoyed because like those business models, they're all ad supported, and there's no way for the ad supported, you know, business models to exist. I mean, you can't have a perfectly secure system because somebody has to know what ads to feed you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and that's such a huge flaw. And this sounds, I mean, this sounds like one of the ways, you know, to solve that, because I've said we've got to find out other ways to fund these kind of projects. Yeah. And looks like you've cracked it.
Yeah, I think the whole SafeCoin thing seems to be something that's, and if it starts being a currency with anything like the value that Bitcoin has got, you know, these guys are all going to build, and girls are all going to build applications, and these coins are going to generate because of building applications, and the whole ecosystem just builds, and we all grow with it. And that to me is it's almost like kind of what Bitcoin's doing as well. You're growing almost at the side of society, but you're providing huge value to society at as little cost as possible, and that's fantastic. When I say cost, I mean hassle. You know,
right?
And that it's really important that we have a system where it feeds itself, and the more people that use it, the more people get fed by it, and that's really important. It's really exciting actually, because one of the things that I was playing with today, I'm always playing with building robots or 3D printing things. One of the things I was playing with today was just a USB disk with a Linux distribution and MaidSafe on it. I thought, well, with that, you can go to any computer, plug this thing in, and it becomes your computer. Log into MaidSafe, you've got a humongous drive. I thought, what if we just build those and then airdrop them all over Africa? $1 USB thing.
Right.
Airdrop them all over Africa and say, grab one of these things, plug it in a computer, create your account. You've got as much disk space as you're probably going to ever require, all the computing power. And if there's one computer shared between 100 kids, it doesn't matter. They just all plug their own USB thing in, and it's their computer while they're using it. Completely secure and completely capable and able to provide more wealth to us, the rest of the world, in terms of information and ideas. So things like that, I think, are going to be possible now with something like the MaidSafe technology. They actually just spread the ability for people to contribute to the wealth of the information that.
Yeah, and it's so inexpensive to do. I mean, this is actually, I love the idea. This is something that I've heard people recommend to like do with say something like Tails OS.
Yep.
You know, for Tor, where look, just you know, in the middle of some country, just drop off a ton of USB drives with Tails on it. That way, people can get in touch. Yep. You know,
very much the same idea. And some of the Tor guys, I've spoken to some of the Tor guys, and they're a great bunch of people as well. And
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I'm hoping that they get more involved with this project, along with the MeshNet guys. The MeshNet guys seem excited by it, but I think that it's one of the things that we do as well in MaidSafe, which is quite an unusual thing. We have this vision of privacy, security, and freedom for all of the people of the world, and we don't care if it's us that does it.
Right.
We just, that's our vision. So that's it. We're here. We'll try our hardest to make it happen, and I think it looks like we could have some great success soon. But it doesn't matter. So I've been going round a lot of projects in the last few weeks and saying to them, look, if you share this vision, let's share the whole thing. Let's share the network. It's not ours. And that's why I can't wait until after the Bitcoin conference, when I can really tell people why this network doesn't belong to us and why it belongs to them.
I love it.
Yeah, it's very important. It's very.
I seriously, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask. You probably get this question a lot, but this is going to be the negative Nelly question.
Yeah.
And because and I know you're just using the term, as an example, but you mentioned cyber brain. I'm sure someone has said to you, "How is this not Skynet?"
Yeah, well, a lot of people have, and really, it's the network's designed to do specific tasks, and it's based on a kind of ant colony thing. And what I noticed was ants form harvester ants, like Deborah Gordon and the Gordon Institute in Stanford. I went to speak to her about this, but they perform 4 actions. They're a forager, or they forage for food, or they carry food back to the nest, or they clean, or they're a soldier. They do 4 specific tasks, but the tasks that they do are extremely simple. There's very few rules involved, but each ant could be expected to be any of those 4 personas, if you like.
Right.
The network is designed that each node has, at the moment, 7 personas, I think. And it depends what message comes to it. But the network is extremely complicated when people look at it. But if you look at each individual node, it's extremely dumb. And very much like an ant nest, you can wipe out an ant with a drop of water, and you can just blow one away with a puff of wind. But when you put millions of them together, they form one of the most sophisticated and complex structures known to man. And the ant colonies have been about for 150 million years. And we keep trying to build artificial intelligence, which is IBM Watson, a huge, complicated single brain, because we think that somehow we're some huge, complex single brain. And that's not the way to build networks, in my opinion. You build lots of extremely dumb things that follow very few rules, but do them exactly correctly. And then you connect them together, and that's what. So it's almost like, if you imagine the MaidSafe network becomes almost like a human brain, but it's programmed specifically to look after data and communications. And that's why it's been quite difficult to build it, because it almost has been like building a human brain or an ant colony. Right. You've got to build all the neurons and the synapses, and you can't test that until you put it together. Just like you can't test an ant colony by taking an ant and analysing it. You've got to put 1 million of them together. That's so long.
That's an interesting analogy, because ants, like you said, they'll create, one of them will drown, but if there's a bunch of them, it'll create a raft.
Yeah.
They'll create their own raft, and they do it completely leaderless. They just do it.
Yeah, that's
which is amazing.
Yeah, and that's why when I look at, like, people talk about decentralization, and and it's one of the things that I spoke to some of the Bitcoin guys about, is don't build everything on a blockchain, like this one blockchain. Nature's the best example of a decentralized system, because it's full of decentralized components themselves, that, like ant colonies or wolves or deers or something, and they all live together in this huge decentralized space, which we call nature. And that's something that's important to me. So MaidSafe will exist and look after data. It shouldn't look after trade, because something on top of it, like Bitcoin, will look after trade.
Right.
Other applications will all sit, but we shouldn't take one decentralized thing and try and build every single thing on top of it. Decentralization means completely decentralized. So MaidSafe will be great for data and communications. Fantastic. There'll be other decentralized systems that are required for other actions that we need as humans. And not everything should sit in MaidSafe, not everything should sit in Bitcoin, but people have to look and try to design an ant colony, for instance, and what each of those ants, what should their function be? Should they have 4 personas? What should each of those be? Is extremely difficult. So decentralized design is extremely difficult, but when you get it, it's inordinately efficient.
Yeah, and I could just see it just instantly taking over because it's so efficient.
Yeah.
People will just say, no, I want to use that.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you brought up that no, this is purpose built. It's going to handle this,
Yeah.
and something else should handle this. This is a huge problem in the Bitcoin space, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, the people want Bitcoin to do everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, don't do that. You don't want it to do everything. That's embrace and expand like Microsoft does. And that's a bad business model, in my opinion.
Yeah, very much so. I think that's where I try to say to people, look, decentralization means decentralization. A wolf doesn't become, you know, a deer. They grow each other's antlers on top of each other. They live together in a decentralized natural system. And they may coexist for this moment in time. But when deers disappear, all the wolves don't die. You know, they might eat something else. So each decentralized system should live on its own and connect at any time to other decentralized. And they may codepend on each other at that particular point in time. They don't codepend on each other forever because nature has got this great thing where it tries things and then kills them off. So species disappear and new species are born. So if every single species was built on top of an amoeba or something, the whole thing would have been wiped out years ago. So nature shows us, don't make everything depend on everything else. Allow things to coexist at any moment in time, but not require so completely symbiotic relations in nature are very abnormal. Most species are pretty independent. And they may have to move to different parts of the world to seek different prey or whatever. And this is the way that the decentralized internet should become. There should be lots of different decentralized systems that can interconnect and provide support and make the whole much more powerful. But they can't all depend on each other. And I think that's some of the risks in some of the Bitcoin community, that if everything gets built on that blockchain thing, then we're trying to squeeze all of nature into one species.
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
Yeah. I love that example. I am going to quote you on that in the future. That's fantastic. You know, and I totally agree. I agree, frankly, with everything you're saying. And I want to know more because I never thought of it in this way, though. I want to know more about your thinking on, you know, basing everything on nature. And I think it's a great idea. And because I hear a lot of people, especially in my own circles and sphere of influence, you know, I hear a lot of people saying, well, we're beyond nature. And it's like, no, we're not. I mean, even gears can be found in insects. You know, there's the plant hopper that actually has gears for, you know, that operate its legs, you know, literal, you know, cog gears. Yeah. I mean, nature shows us everything, I think. Absolutely. And you seem to feel the same way. Would you explain like kind of where that philosophy comes from?
I think really I'm an engineer basically fundamentally, and I stare at things and wonder why they do what they do and try and read as much as I possibly can. I've never read a non-fiction book in my life except for 1984 because I had to for school. So,
non-fiction.
Yeah, I'm one of those kind of people you don't want to meet in a pub, and there's the boring guy. No, but I like quizzing. I like finding things out, and I just find nature's a fascinating thing because we think we're smarter than nature, and people like that, I think, well, it'd be great. Why don't you spend 5 minutes in a room with Ebola? You know, how much smarter you are. And nature evolves, and I think we're part of this evolving thing. We've hardly been here any time at all in this planet, so I think it seems to do experiments, and we could be an experiment. We could have been wiped out with the Cuban crisis. We could have been wiped out with the financial crisis. You know, something could happen that could wipe out humanity very quickly, I think, because we're being allowed to develop at extreme pace. And I think if you look at nature, you see systems at work. There's never been an ability for us. We've started building these mesh robot things now, you know, to try and emulate like nature, but we can't build a machine that flies like a bird. We can't build an ant colony. We can't, there's lots of stuff we can't do. And nature has had 13.5 billion years or whatever, to be able to design systems that actually do work, and they work in a nice symmetry with each other, that there's all these decentralized systems that do work together and work very well. And it balances, nature balances at an extreme pace. We poison the atmosphere, nature fixes it. So it's got a lot to teach us, and there's so many variables involved that we have got almost no understanding of it. And that's why I think it's a bit like Richard Feynman, the physicist.
Yeah.
He always said, if you're doing something and you can't find that in nature, you're doing it wrong. And
that is an interesting quote. Yeah.
And I totally believe that if you look at something and you think that's not a natural design, it's not. And it's like if you look at the centralized internet, for instance, we've got servers, they're not secure. So what do? Put them in bomb shelters, they're still not secure. So we put a VPN around it or something, still doesn't work. Put an extra security in the router, put firewalls, put intrusion detection, and we put bandages on these things for ages. When in actual fact, what we should be doing is rip all that stuff away, because that's all rubbish. And look, you've got the design wrong. This is what's wrong. Your base algorithm's wrong. Look in nature and find a server-based system. It doesn't exist. There's a good reason it doesn't exist. For 13.5 billion years, nature hasn't been able to make that work either.
Right.
We're not going to. And I think nature teaches us way more than we are prepared to learn from it at times.
Yeah.
And for me, it's an important master. As I say, I used to do quite a lot of sailing, and one of the things I loved about sailing or being in a lifeboat was the waves. The honesty of the weather and nature is incredible, because you challenge it, it'll just drown you.
Yeah.
There's no lying, there's no dishonesty, there's no trying to talk your way around a wave. That's it. And it really teaches you an awful lot about respecting the world round about you to begin with, and then absorbing what it's teaching you. It teaches us all the time, and we just need to watch it. And I think we need to look at what we're doing in terms of building financial systems, even building houses. Nature. We should be looking all the time at nature and saying, well, after 13.5 billion years that worked, why don't we do that thing?
Right.
And I think we're learning a lot. I think one of the things that will come out of MaidSafe is that type of thinking. And if we produce the new version of the internet, which is much more secure and more widely used and more appreciated
and more robust and more stable too.
Yeah, and I think that's a kind of proof that way of thinking is quite good. I think Richard Feynman was a phenomenal proof that thinking in that manner was a very clever way to go. So,
yeah, I agree. I mean, I say this a lot on Sovryn Tech, that so much of what we consider normal isn't even 100 years old.
No.
I mean, not even close. Like even people living in homes now in the United States, it's a little bit different. But I think maybe you can confirm. You're in Scotland. I think you could kind of confirm in Europe. I mean, home ownership is almost. I mean, that's a really new idea.
Yeah.
Like that just didn't happen up until what, 20, 30, 50 years ago, maybe?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting actually. In the 80s, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan had this fantastic relationship, and what happened here was we went into home ownership. So most of the council homes were sold. And interestingly enough, that was supposed to be the making of us all, which led to this crash thing we just had.
Yeah.
The amount of home ownership then was 60%, is back to 60%. Everybody now rents their house again, but they now rent it off private landlords.
Right.
And again, we're messing with systems we don't really understand. And now, rather than councils getting all the money from that rent and providing better roads and services, private landlords get it, and the roads have got holes in them.
Yeah, right.
So, and again, that's nature saying, be as greedy as you want, but you're going to pay for this.
Yeah.
And we did, and we'll continue to do that. Every time we be greedy, nature will reward us with, this financial crash and things like that, and holes in our road. And
yeah, I love this whole philosophy, that you're describing, because I mean, even you take something like the surveillance state, like you mentioned, 1984 and all that. I mean, none of this stuff is normal.
No,
and like it's going to implode on its own weight because the system hasn't evolved, and evolution's the mother of innovation. I mean, and you mess with that, it's over. And this stuff's just going to fall away on its own.
Absolutely. I think that the whole spying thing is incredible. I was listening to a chat the other day he was on TED, one of the NSA guys, talking about weakening cryptography and saying we use that same weak cryptography, and you think, well, look at what's happening here, like from the outside world perspective. You're using stuff that's weak that other people are probably breaking into.
Right.
Don't do that. Just go for the logical thing. Get the correct cryptography, balance. If you're trying to protect stuff, protect it.
Yeah, it's an ironic thing because the lie being schlepped to people is that well, we got to do this. We got to put in NSA backdoors, and we have to put in, we have to have all this stuff to be safer, when actually the really safe thing is to not have any backdoors at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a total lie that they're giving people.
My philosophy on making things safer and all the rest of it, because we get asked about stuff like, look, could your system be used for terrorism and things? Yeah, and so could Mr. Ford's cars be used for terrorism.
Yeah, right.
But the thing that beats all of those ills, that snooping and misinformation and all the rest of it, and I live in the UK. The UK is the world leader for misinformation.
Sure.
We invented propaganda. But all of that stuff is easily fixed, and it's just fixed through education.
Right.
And educate people, provide tools like the internet, tools like MaidSafe. Here's access to actual real information. And one of the innovations that I would love to see in the MaidSafe network, and it's entirely possible, I've done the design for it, and that was in 2006 as well, is a worldwide aggregated and ranked news system where there's an avatar that tells the same news to every single person in the world in their own language. So if 3 people get shot in Afghanistan and one happens to be a soldier, it's, there'll be a mum get shot, a son get shot, and another person get shot who was a soldier. We should all hear the same story. And if we all hear the same story in the news all the time, we'll all stop hating each other, and we won't want to fight each other. Because I remember years ago reading about a Palestinian and an Israeli they got chatting on the internet, and they started realising that, actually, you're a real person too. I don't really want you to die or your family. And I think if we can give everybody in the world the same information, and it's ranked and rated by the people of the world, and just giving everybody in the world the same news, you're going to get rid of much more terrorism than snooping on everybody for life.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's going to be like the understanding that people will have between each other will be amazing.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, because news in particular, depending on which country it goes to, gets filtered.
Absolutely.
I was in the military myself, and I mean, the numbers I know that were getting sent to the United States of the amount of soldiers that died were really low compared to what they actually were.
Yeah.
And actually, like, I mean, listening to Al Jazeera, you got a far more accurate news report.
Yeah.
Than you did from MSNBC. And so, boy, I agree with you. I think that's beautiful. I hadn't even thought of that. If you could just like have this distributed news network that was just straight up and honest and not filtered, wow, what that could do for the world. I agree.
And if it's on a completely decentralized system, managed by people on the system, it's not possible to take it off. That's another interesting thing about MaidSafe. Nobody can switch it off. We can't even switch it off when we launch it.
Right.
It can't be stopped. You can switch off DNS. It ignores all that stuff. That's really important. So that big brain, if you like, that big machine, could do federated news. And that will stop many more deaths than any war or any snooping or any of this kind of thing.
Yeah. And, you think about how important, especially like with what's going on in Turkey right now. I mean, where the government's trying to shut down Twitter and Google's DNS and all this stuff. MaidSafe would just, laugh at all.
Yeah, I just completely ignore it. completely.
Amazing. Wow. I I love it. I want to move on to another subject real quick.
Yeah.
If you have more time.
Yeah.
But I want to ask this last question about MaidSafe at least. Doesn't have to be the last, but will this be available on, like, how will this be available for OSs? This will obviously be on Mac, Windows, Linux, BSD. I mean, like what's the distribution?
It's completely cross-platform. That's one of the things we've done from day one. So it works on every system that we know of. We now have to get it compiling on the mobile platforms, and there's a few projects looking at that.
Okay.
All desktop operating systems, that's a no-brainer. That's from day one. That's been the case.
Awesome. Because a lot of these, I mean, not that I've really heard any idea quite like MaidSafe, but a lot of these newer technologies that come out, they're often very concentrated on one OS or one or two, and they kind of leave Linux by the wayside or something. But this, well, fantastic. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, no, it's that was a really. It actually helps if you're from a programming perspective. It helps you do much better code when it has to be cross-platform. So it allows you to create much better, stronger code. So it's important. Sure,
it has to be cleaner code. That way, more people can read it quickly, use it, and adapt it fast to other OSs. That's agreed. That's a great side effect.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, David, you're clearly a really forward-thinking guy, and you've got a blog. I love this blog. It's metaquestions.me. That's the web address, metaquestions.me. And, like some of the ideas I read in that are really, I mean, this is, like I say, forward thinking, kind of far out stuff. I mean, what is, you mentioned that you look in nature. Is that what, is that what inspires a lot of your blog posts on there?
It's really, I think I like to look at things 180 degrees. I think, like, how do you solve this problem? I would think, well, how could you not have that problem in the first place? So I like to challenge myself with these kind of thought experiments. And in the last couple of months, I've started this blog, and I'm not a writer. I'm a typical engineer. I'm a terrible writer, and grammar's all over the place. But I just dump ideas down and try and develop things. And people seem to now start being quite enjoying it. So I've started investigating things like, I've done a series about things that own themselves in Bitcoin, like a robot could own itself, or a car could own itself. And
okay, now you gave an example. I read one where it was about a self-driving car that could essentially own itself. Would you be willing to go into that just to give an example to the audience?
The self-driving car is quite good. It's just someone would build this car, self-driving car, and it would have Bitcoin ability to take money, so it would have its own wallet. Then it would drive about and act as a taxi. Basically, people would jump in, ask where they want to go, and pay in Bitcoin. So that car's wallet would be filling up, and then it would go to the garage and it would buy petrol in Bitcoin. So its wallet would be a deposit made from its wallet to the garage owner, and as many taxis as possible would be doing that on these self-driving cars. And when they needed repairs, they go to the garage and the mechanic can repair them and then take the payment in Bitcoin. And at the end of life, or when they become less efficient, they are then scrapped, and the Bitcoin that's left in their wallet is used to scrap the car. And the good thing about that would be that if you introduce something like the MaidSafe network into the mix, these cars could all speak to themselves. They could all speak to. I've got this design for autonomous distributed intelligence, which is teaching robots to speak to each other. You teach one robot French, and all of the robots in the world know French, kind of. So it's an interesting concept. But these cars would all be able to speak to themselves. So what would happen is that the people getting transported from place to place, and the taxi would be happening at the lowest possible cost. And if a new car came along that was more efficient, it was a Tesla or something, it could do that cheaper. It would be taking a lower price in Bitcoin, because all these things would be mathematically calculated. So us as humans are always getting the most efficient system, and the self-driving car system themselves, they're logical and mechanically working through maths. So they're driving efficiency the whole time. Their job is to be efficient. So
Right.
the least efficient car would actually take itself off the road and go to the repair shop to be upgraded to a more efficient car or broken up or whatever. So these devices don't actually need to be owned by anyone. People are feeding money in and they're able to pay money out for fuel or services or repairs. So there's actually no point in having ownership of those things. So that they can actually own themselves. There's no requirement. So as they're working, they could pay themselves. So you could decide you're going to build one for $50,000 and the taxi will pay you back your $50,000.
Right.
You know, and if you're more expensive than $50,000, the taxi won't tell any other taxi to get built there. You know, so they'll drive down the cost of the manufacturer as well. So,
And it'll just maintain its. See, now this is such an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Because now what you call it, distributed autonomous intelligence, is that?
Distributed
Okay.
autonomous intelligence, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because especially when you think about how much it costs to maintain a car.
Yeah.
I mean, and for some people it's a joy, you know, I mean, I enjoy cars too, but I mean, at the same time, you know, when you think about that and really how little a car gets used, but how much it costs to just keep using it all the time. What an incredible idea. And so owning itself, like, I mean, what do you have any, maybe I'm putting you on the spot, but I mean, do you have any like higher ethical points to that?
Not really. I think it's just the efficiency. We're looking for efficiency the whole time, and it's interesting for us to drive about and kill people with our cars when you have a system that kills nobody and is done at a lesser cost. And I think if you drive down costs like that, sometimes I see Bitcoin as a potential to move towards a resource-based economy. And I think the more of these systems that come in place, the further towards a resource-based economy we become, where people work at what they love to work at. Mm-hmm. That's what everybody levitates to what they want to do. And if you want to train dolphins for a while and you're good at it, go and do it. And so I think that making society much more efficient, and you won't get one of these cars lying to you and taking you the wrong road, you know, what happened, you know. So I think another really interesting way to look at that one, Brian, is if you've got a CT scanner in a hospital and that's connected to this distributed autonomous intelligent network, and the doctor says to you that you've got something wrong with your shoulder, and you get the CT scan and it says, oh, you've got some kind of growth there, we'll cut you open or whatever. If that CT scanner was also a robot, and again, owning themselves in Bitcoin, they make their money out. But if that was a robot connected to a distributed network, that robot would be able to look at every single one of those scans, all the millions of x-rays that actually happen in a CT scan, and notice there is a growth in your shoulder, but there's also a dot in your left finger. And it would be able to look at all the other scans of everyone on the planet who's ever been scanned before and say, every time that's happened, all that you need to do is take half an aspirin. And that's where the machine wouldn't be replacing the doctor, because at that point the doctor's useless. Because a doctor looking at an X-ray or a CT scan can't look at 3 trillion points per second. Robots can, and if they've got the ability to those CT scanning robots, so they're not identifying you as a person or whatever, they're just identifying this body in front of them, and they're able to say, with those particular things showing up in the scan, this is a remedy for it. And that's where distributed autonomous intelligence could become very powerful.
That's incredible. And like with the MaidSafe network, if it ran off of that same idea, no one person would have control of, you know, of the your identity or anything like that. You would be the only person that could input that and then and have access to those records. And then the DAI, essentially the DAI doctor, you know, the distributed autonomous intelligence doctor, you know, could then access it, but only with your permission.
Yeah, and you could do that deal with, so those CT machines would all have their own private shared part on the internet. You could do the deal with them, say, I'm going to let you use my scan. And I think it's one thing with humans, we tend to trust machines. You know, we tend to have a trust in machinery because we probably know it's quite logically put together and that it's run correctly.
Sure.
More than we would trust a person. We wouldn't give a stranger our bank details, but we'd put our bank details into maybe our calculator or something. And
Right.
this relationship with machines, I think, can be maintained as long as the machine can be shown to be working with logic and maths, and there's lots of us able to look at it and say, yep, that's very secure, don't worry about it.
Well, that's the beauty of open source, right?
Yeah.
Is that, we can all take a look, as long as, we learn what we need to, to look at the code.
Yeah.
We can all look at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Which I think is just the real importance behind open source,
Yeah.
that a lot of people need to really recognize.
Yeah.
That is an incredible, I love it. This whole thing. I mean, this is one of the most exciting interviews, and really, I think that I've done, because this stuff is exactly the kind of thing that I've been really wanting to hear and see people working on. You've been doing it for 8 years.
8 years, yeah. We've kept it very secret.
Yeah, it's great. Now, I mean, real quick, could I ask? I mean, like, what was the idea of keeping it secret?
It was really, we're too busy to talk about it. And
Sure.
It was really complicated. Trying to explain it was very, very difficult. And we just thought, if we start explaining it, people ask us questions, so we'll hide away and get all the algorithms working. And then it's being Scottish as well. I think you've got to have, everything's got to work first. So that was really why we kept kind of quiet. We did speak to some people, but not all that many. And 8 weeks ago, we just decided, that's it. It's all working. Let's get it out there.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with, like you mentioned, with Bitcoin, the world seemed to be ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
For these kinds of ideas.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
No problem at all, Brian.
Yeah. No, David, I mean, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think that's great. I think having a great time answering the questions and
yeah, I love it.
So
let's see, metaquestions.me. I'll say, if anyone wants to just read some really, really forward, deep thought, go check out David's blog there. But then what's the best way to find MaidSafe?
MaidSafe.net, MAID, MaidSafe.net.
Yeah.
And you should be hearing a bit more about us in the next few weeks, so hopefully.
Yeah, if there's the Inside Bitcoin conference, I believe that's what it's called, in New York, April 7th to the 9th, I think.
Yeah, and I think we've got a speaking slot at that, so everybody's welcome to listen to us chatting about things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be there. David will be there. If anyone, I mean, I'm sure there's still tickets. People, come catch this. This is going to be an interesting conference, I think. But David, thank you so much. Thank you for developing this. Thank you for everything you are doing. I am always excited, really, to talk to people that are pushing humanity forward, and I really think you are, and that's just fantastic stuff.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. That's really good of you.
Absolutely. So, listeners, Carpe Lucem. I will see you in the next episode of Sovryn Tech.
This has been Sovryn Tech. Visit us at sovryntech.com. That's SOVRYN tech.com. There you can connect with us, see more of what you've heard on today's show, and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is open source. We encourage you to share. Later, nerds.